Raise your hand if you've ever got shilled some absolute garbage that you're still holding now from prior cycles, or maybe just prior months, or maybe even earlier this cycle. Raise your hand if you ever had to rely on crypto influencers to provide your financial future. Because after watching this video, you will never have to rely on another crypto YouTuber again about when altcoin season is, when to sell at the top of the crypto markets, and how to invest in this market. You're gonna have all the tools at your disposal. So watch the entirety of this video. You don't want to miss a single part of it to get the full scope of when altcoin season is and when you should be selling. So this is Google Trends. Now, Google Trends is a great way to figure out when the tops of cycles may be coming, because this is when interest is its highest. Everyone from your grandmother to your best friend to your mom to anyone who doesn't know about crypto is hearing all about it, and they're researching, trying to figure out what the hell's going on. You may also have people that are in crypto as well who are also paying more attention to the market at this particular time. So you see a lot of Google Trends spike. So using different terms like Bitcoin, or using terms like crypto, or using terms like altcoins, are usually spike around the same time. And you can see here at the first peak in 2021, we can see that interest peaked at its highest point, roughly around 75, but peaking over 75 a lot of times is when we had the first peak in 2021. So I'm actually going to show you on the chart what that looked like. And if you date back here to some of these dates, you can see April around May. I'll zoom in on the video for you. And that absolutely also marks when Google Trends also was peaking. You can see here in April and May as well, right? If I were to go back just 12 months or so, we can see a lot of data from this. Now, we had a big spike in Bitcoin in late of last year for Google Trends, and we also had a big spike in the Bitcoin price as well, if we go back on the chart. Now, this one is a little more technical in the sense that not a lot of people know about this specific chart, which is the ISM. Now, this has everything to do with the business cycle and how businesses are performing in America and globally, right? And as we can see, every time we've peaked with the ISM, I'm gonna go back even 10 years, you can see the cycle top in late 2017. We had a peak in around September, and you can see into the beginning of 2018. If we go back on the Bitcoin chart, we can also see that. Let me zoom in for you as well. But you can see here that we also have a peak in Bitcoin price around December. And if we go back to the ISM, it perfectly detailed. Once we start to creep up above that 55-point level is when we start to see Bitcoin creep up above prior all-time highs and onto new all-time highs as well. So looking even back at the 2021 peak, we're up at 64 points on the ISM. So what we're pretty much getting from this is that whenever we start to creep above the 55-point and head towards the 60-point mark is usually when we start to see the Bitcoin price also react similarly. So if we go back to 2021, and I know I'm going through this quickly, but I really want you to see what I'm talking about. You can see here that we also had a similar chart pattern on the ISM. First top in March, we were up at 64 points. And you can also see the first top in March, we're up at 64 points. So that is two separate charts. We had the Google Trends chart that showed us altcoin season and when it came, and then when the top for Bitcoin came of that cycle, the last two prior cycles, and we also showed you with the ISM. Now, to me, the ISM is probably the best indicator of this because it's the one that stays consistent. This is how the economy is doing. This is how the business cycle is moving, right? It moves in 4 to 5 year swings, right? Really 3 to 5 year swings. And that's why we have 4-year cycles as far as Bitcoin as well, right? And I'm not going to get into global liquidity and global M2 money supply and all that kind of stuff, but that also plays a factor and probably plays the biggest factor. But I also want to show you something as well. The fear and greed index, if we go back to around the times where we had peaks in the market, we can see that greed also peaked in a lot of those times. So if you go back to late last year, you can see greed start to peak above 90. March of 2024 as well. I'm going to show you on the actual chart of those two peaks. You can see here in March, Bitcoin come from the lows in December 2022, and we actually hit new all-time highs at that point. This is 2024 of March. And like I showed you before, at the end of December of last year, we also reached peaks, and this is actually detailed out on the fear and greed index chart. So whenever we see fear and greed peak above 80 to 90, it's usually been a pretty good time to take profits. I'm not talking about selling your entire bag, but definitely taking profits, because we know that the crypto markets and markets in general, including the stock market and real estate, can stay overvalued for a lot longer than it's really rational, you know? So This is another great chart to look at as well. And I hope I'm not speeding through this, but I want to get you all the tools in a concise amount of time so you can go out and use this for yourself. And in the future, when we look at something like the MVRV Z-score, right, we can also see that now this one has the actual price of Bitcoin detailed out on the chart as well. So this is pretty handy. But you can see the yellow lines are when we have the the Z-score, I'm going to call it, peak, and we have different peaks throughout, right? And you also have the green chart here, which is the Bitcoin price, and the Bitcoin price is also peaked out at the same time that the Z-score has peaked out. And this details a lot of what happens in the market. So when we see a spike above these 7 levels, when we usually see a spike in the Bitcoin price, and this is all detailed out on the chart. So this for me is another really good chart to use when you're trying to detail out where we are in the cycle, because altcoin season will always show up right before we get these spikes up to these levels here. As we showed you before on the fear and greed index, it's usually around 75 to 90, a little bit above 80. On the ISM, you want to peak above 55 and get up to that 60-point mark. And obviously on Google Trends, you want to see it spike above 90 as well. And then on the MVRVZ score, which is a lot to say, you want to see it peak up into the red part, which is above this 7 level, which we've almost done every single time except for the 2021 cycle. And this is when these other tools come into play and help you detail out when altcoin season is or when the top of a Bitcoin cycle is, because a lot of these metrics will peak above their flashing indicators. And because this one didn't detail exactly at the red, right, you probably were waiting for it to get into the red like these other spikes over here. But that's why using these other tools is so important as well. Now, one of the biggest reasons we use multiple charts is because we have something like the dollar index, which is another macro tool that we use to see where the prices of Bitcoin and these different crypto assets are going in the near to short term, right? So when you get below the 100 mark for the DXY, which is the neutral point, you can see here that this has a lot of significance as to when we start to go into a real full-fledged bull cycle. Well, obviously we're in a bull cycle, but a real full-fledged alt season, because you can see every time we've peaked past these prior levels of support and broken down towards the 90 level is when we've seen the tops in the Bitcoin price. And I don't really have to show you that. I already showed you in 2021. You can see the first peak was around April to May. We touched below 90 around that point. You can see at the end of 2017, beginning of 2018, we also had a peak in the Bitcoin price, right? So right now, we haven't even broke down below support yet. Until I see us break down into break through support on the DXY, I have no reason to believe that we are even close to having an altcoin season at this point. Now, did I think that some of these metrics would flash differently than what they are currently doing right now? I did, but we also have to understand that it's usually sell and go away in May. So we may be in one of those periods in the market now where we're kind of waiting for fall to come around and Q4 to see a spike in a lot of these different crypto assets in the Bitcoin price, and to really have one of those full-fledged altcoin seasons. To me, right now, the cycle's playing out very similar to 2017. And this is also proven on a lot of these charts, because if we go back to a lot of these charts and the Bitcoin price, we can see a lot of similarities when we date back to 2017, right? Another great tool, and this is somewhat so you don't have to keep up with crypto influencers. Remember, I was telling you at the beginning of the video, you want to be able to not only detail when altcoin season is and when you should be buying and selling in general, right? Even when the bottom of the market comes next time around, right? Which is something we didn't talk about in this video, but you can even use these metrics for when the bottom of the market comes. But a lot of these crypto influencers and pages have news, right? They're news outlets, and they update you about what's going on in the market and they give the perspective. If you want the news without any bias, there's one person that I recommend you follow. His name is watcher.guru. You can follow him on Telegram or Twitter. Shout out to him because he's a fantastic, unbiased news source. And you can also use something like Crypto Panic. And this is something I use because this has all the information. It looks like a dump of information, right? But you can look here on the left. You see everything from 18 minutes ago, 20 minutes ago, 33 minutes ago, an hour ago. And you can filter out the top news, all the news sites. You can filter out the stuff that's rising, the stuff that's hot, things that are bullish and bearish about the market. Literally everything, or you can just go to the straight important things that you need. And you can make your decisions not only based off what you see on the chart, but what you see going on in the world as it pertains to crypto. These are the tools you should be using to update yourself about where we are in the cycle. And this is something you use throughout the entirety of the cycle. Mind you, a lot of these metrics you don't have to look at every single day. But if you're ever wondering and you're hearing a lot of fluff online, a lot of noise, this is one of the ways you can cancel all that out. Just go get the information for yourself. It's there for you. This is why I'm making this video, right? So don't be afraid to make mistakes either. And I'm not saying don't watch crypto influencers, but if you're in the position where you're tired of following their direction, this is how you keep up on the market on your own, right? And obviously this isn't all the information. I have plenty of videos on other things to help you as well. But that's why you subscribe to the channel and leave a like on this video. And please, please, please do me a favor and comment down below if there's anything you want me to cover in any videos. I may have already made the video, right? So I can point you in the right direction to watch that video, or make it in the coming days to weeks so I can release it for you. But I want to thank you guys for watching my channel. I love you guys, and I'll see you in the next one.